Thank you very much for having me. So I'm going to probably bring us upstack a little bit. Not only does the Filecoin network store a large amount of data, but it actually produces a large amount of data. And we talked a bit about all of that highly heterogeneous distributed data about operators and markets, et cetera, that's available. And in this talk, we're going to briefly look at how we can put that data to work to make a sort of richer, healthier ecosystem. So with that, we're going to talk about quality metrics and reputation. Try. So just keep in mind that when we go to put data to work to actually make decisions, there's a lot of processes that happen after you get the raw data. So we saw an example of how various tools will actually collect this highly rich low-level data. And we want to start to think about how we can take it to the level where we can interpret and make actions. And when I say we, I don't mean Filecoin itself. I actually mean the participants in the ecosystem. And what's tricky about this is in your sort of traditional sort of Web 2 or corporate setting, there are highly specialized teams that develop and maintain the data infrastructure, especially when it's the scale of the infrastructure used to monitor data coming off of the Filecoin network. And what I'd like to talk about is how we can actually realize that on this public data, on this maintenance and monitoring problem associated with the Filecoin ecosystem at large. So in particular, we're going to focus on interpret and act, since we got to look already at data being collected, cleaned, joined, and enriched. What we do in order to better understand what's going on is look at the way that the information flows from its sort of low level data up through more advanced concepts related to the quality metrics, and not just the instantaneous values of those quality metrics, but sort of aggregations and estimations over time. So this particular diagram is a flow created by one of the block science researchers, Danilo. He's been working on a bunch of Filecoin metric research with us. And what we're seeing is the way the individual metrics in the middle, and these are examples, would feed into various use cases or decision-making problems that are related to the operation and consumption of the services on the Filecoin network, whether those are storage clients buying service contracts with miners, or whether these are lenders or insurers in the emerging Filecoin markets to help cover the collateral aspects. So we kind of highlight at least a few different decision-making problems that we're going to be expecting participants in this ecosystem to experience that we should see being made in a data-driven way. So lenders are making decision about how much to lend based on maybe the deal verification status of miners who they would be lending Filecoin to. We can imagine the emergence of underwriters who actually underwrite those loans to make sure that these lending providers actually have their risk managed properly. I think a standard case would be storage clients deciding which miners to work with and say what they're willing to pay for those services. And we can even look at miners looking to improve their ROI by better understanding how to manage their computational and financial resources. Kind of within this whole environment, we would expect all of these use cases to emerge, and actually to emerge individually. And there's a sort of interesting phenomena where no one party owns the data infrastructure at the data storage level or even at the sort of data interpretation level. And so what we hope to see is a growing provider basis for these types of analytics. One example is a reputation score. And we put a lot of effort into making sure that reputation isn't sort of a God's eye, this is your credit score, and if you do badly, you're doomed, because that can be a little bit overly deterministic, and it can cause someone who has a bad score maybe to never be able to do anything again. But in this case, we're looking at the scores as something that changes over time, and that which scores matter might depend on the use case. So in this simple example, where Alice is a service provider and Bob is a service consumer, Bob might actually care about different quality metrics depending on what that service is. And so if this is a consumer of basically a client who's going to consume storage, maybe they and that storage is maybe small, they care mostly about the retrieval time and the likelihood of their deal termination and the uptime. So they weight those things accordingly, and we can actually look at a mixture of a set of quality metrics. And part of the reason this is so important is because as an architecture, it's like a little bit more intersubjective. Yeah, okay, we have some low-level facts, but the way that we aggregate them up to make a decision might depend a lot on the context of that decision. This is an inherently more decentralized approach to monitoring analytics. And what we find then is a lot of the important compression of the low-level information happens at the design of quality metrics. And one can use this highly detailed data that comes from the various explorers that people within the ecosystem are building, like this example from SpaceGap, to roll up to these sort of these various quality metrics, such as a reliability measure that might have some nuance into how we aggregate information over space and time. But as long as we have a well-defined and sort of even provable reference for how we built the metric, people can decide for themselves whether or not they want to use that metric as part of the reputation score that they use to make decisions about their operations within the network. And so I want to wrap up by looking at all ways some of these things could fit together. We have these low-level ecosystem operations, data collection, aggregation, and computation of quality metrics. And we can see how that might feed into these reputation scores, which might actually be provided by many different service providers, as well as other kinds of operational performance metrics, which might not be interpretable as reputation, but feed into a wide range of optimization algorithms, discovery platforms, or credit ratings used to actually serve the end users in the Filecoin network, whether they're consuming applications or services. And to kind of connect back to what we've heard earlier, this is really what's going to drive end use by people who don't necessarily need to understand the low-level details about the Filecoin network, but they can still trust it to provide them services. They make decisions to use and participate in that network, and that drives outcomes. New observations are made in the low-level data, and it finds its way back up to the top again. And so we have an inherently iterative system, even when everyone is not trying to fulfill all the parts. So I invite the people in this summit to really think about where they can best provide or participate in this ecosystem. So thank you very much.